Welcome to the Sales Code Leadership Podcast. My name is Kevin Teeler. I'm the podcast host and delighted this week to introduce Leigh Ashton. Leigh, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very good. Hello, everyone.
You certainly seem very positive and upbeat, which, as you know, is the main topic we're going to talk about today. But I just wanted to give you a quick intro, Leigh, from my side. So Leigh is the founder and CEO of the Sales Consultancy and the author of a very successful, recently released book, Grow Your People, Grow Your Sales. The main thing, as I say, we want to get into today is mindset, because you're also the UK partner for the Mindset Advantage. So we're going to kick into that in a second. But before we do, Leigh, what is it you get paid to do today?
I get paid to transform the mindset of sales teams from a high performance culture to a learning and growth culture, which we are going to go into in a bit more detail, I know, but it's about allowing people to show up as themselves instead of trying to be that gun-ho salesperson or sales leader in that high-performing, what I think is a win-lose culture, whereas in a growth mindset culture, it's a win-win because everyone can be a winner, even when they're new. It's all about incremental gains. So that's what I get paid to do now.
Is that the career you had in mind when you were 16?
Oh, no. In fact, I had no idea at 16 about any career. So I actually left school at 16. My friend had got a job in a bank, so I just applied to go and work in a bank. And like a lot of people fell into sales by accident, but as soon as I got into sales, I realised that was where my heart was immediately.
What was your first sales job?
I worked for a service company called Initial Services, and who used to sell, well, still do, I guess, roller towels and overalls to garages and, all that kind of stuff.
Did you enjoy that job?
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I couldn't believe that I was getting paid to talk with people all day long. I just thought, this isn't even like working.
And is that what you still love about selling now? What is it? Yeah.
I really don't feel like it's work. I feel like it's service. So back then, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was always very good at chatting with people and getting into rapport. And so for me, I felt like I was going in to help someone who couldn't do what they wanted or needed to do without some input from the company that I was working for. So I felt that sales was like such a big service offering. I feel, and still do, I feel that if your heart is in the right place, you don't go in to make a sale. You actually go in to help an organisation to achieve something that they can't achieve on their own.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way of expressing it. Now, if I'm right, you started your business 20 odd years ago.
I know, 1995. I know I don't look it.
You don't?
I started very young.
You don't? Obviously, I mean, people can do the maths on this if they want to. I'm not going to jump into that, but yes. So 27 years of running your own business, and it's a team of people now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got people that work with me, and also I find people along the way who don't necessarily work for me, but are of the same mindset, who are of the same way of thinking, that sales doesn't have to be this hard or this cruel. And I use that word deliberately.
I think it's like everything else selling. Someone said to me years ago, you know what, Kev, if you're having to sell something too hard, you're probably either doing it the wrong way or selling the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's so true.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's really true.
Because at the end of the day, you're helping people to buy more than pushing product or solution. That's what we've got to do.
Yeah, I think you truly are facilitating that buying journey. And I think it's also all right to say, we're not the right people for you.
Really?
Yeah, I do. If you can't, I mean, people have come to me in my career and asked for sales development. And I say, I could do that, but it's not really my gig. There are people who would do that better. So let me signpost you to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And those people give me referrals, even though they have never used me, because they trust me.
So figure out what you're good at and get better at it.
Just figure out what you're good at, what your niche is. And because lots of organisations say, can you come and teach our people how to negotiate? I go, well, I could, but that's not really me.
No.
I don't necessarily focus on the sales process. Do I bring that into the mindset development? Yes, of course, because I'm a salesperson and I get salespeople to fall in love with the process that is already there as long as the process works. But I wouldn't be the kind of trainer, developer that you would call in to create a process or write a playbook. That's not me. That's not my gig.
No. So you're very much about what goes on between our ears.
Yeah.
Pointing at both sides of my head for those people listening to the audio podcast, what goes on between our ears.
Yeah.
And so you partner with the mindset product I think it's from Matthew Syed, isn't it?
It is.
Wasn't he a ping pong player as well as a business psychologist and stuff?
Yes, he was. As a teenager, him and his brother were both table tennis champions, And because of that, he was really interested in performance.
Yes.
And when he left that game of table tennis, he became a journalist and a book writer and spoke about mindset and performance. And he's like, I don't know if it's because I know him, but he's everywhere. He's on the BBC, on the radio. He's in the Sunday Times, writes a fantastic article for the Sunday Times. And he's a really extraordinary thought leader. He's writing about stuff that people aren't even thinking yet.
I wish. I read his column in the Sunday Times every week. And I've actually bought his book as well. Black Box Thinking, I think it's called.
Yeah, Black Box Thinking is one of his early books. It's phenomenal. I suggest it to all sales leaders.
And why do you do that? What's good about it?
I love it because it's all about marginal gains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about thinking in a growth mindset way. Because, without giving away what the book is about, it compares the aviation industry to the medical industry and how each industry approaches mistakes. And growth mindset is all about learning from mistakes. That's how human beings learn. If you look at babies, they don't get it right first time. They try and try and try until they perfect a skill. And it's about how can you continuously be evolving by a tiny bit each day so that eventually all those tiny bits add up to something truly magical.
So it's based on the work of Professor Carol Dweck.
Yes.
And a book that she wrote a few years ago called The Growth Mindset, isn't it? I can't remember now.
I think it's called Mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah,
Mindset.
Mindset. And that's when she termed the phrase growth mindset. But interestingly, whilst she did her research in the late 90s and the book was published in 2006, I think, I'd already worked out that mindset was the thing. And I'm sure other sales leaders had worked it out, that it didn't matter how many times you showed a salesperson how to do something, it didn't mean they would do it. And it was the mindset and the attitude that really brought that action into life, that the person embraced it. And it wasn't until Carol Dweck published her research that we thought, that's what That is it. That's what we've been noticing and feeling and understanding. That's it.
I remember reading something a couple of years ago, a sales leader wrote, I think he said, which I think is so true. He said, we usually hire salespeople on skills and knowledge, and we fire on attitude, and it should be the other way around.
That's so great. I love that.
It's true, isn't it? So
Yeah,
we're going to take a bit more of a dive into that in a second. Before we do, Leigh, I'd just like to get a clear understanding of the difference between a performance sales culture and a growth sales culture. Could you just help us with that, please?
So a high performance culture is where everyone is wanting to win. So you've got your top performers, your A players, who are always at the top of the league. And there might be a bit of variation, but you see the same names over and over again. Now, for me, these would be the people who are naturally growth mindset. So these are the people that when they make a mistake, they just get up and learn from it. And, you know, it doesn't faze them. They just see it as part of the process. They are self-developing human beings. They're always looking for ways to evolve and get better. In fact, they don't even need a sales leader. Like Donald Duck could be their sales leader and they would still perform amazingly well because they're just built that way. So in those organisations where those people are really acknowledged for their skill, acknowledged for their performance, that makes them the winners and everyone else is a loser. Nobody uses that language, but everyone else outside of the A players becomes a statistic on a spreadsheet in terms of looking at KPIs. The human being behind that performance is very much in the background unless there is a sales leader who is really pro mindset, who is really interested in learning who that human being is in their team so that they can communicate and connect with them in a deeper way. But in most organisations, everyone's travelling at such a fast pace. The winners are great, the rest are a statistic or a loser in brackets. As I say, nobody uses that terminology. So that means people don't feel very good in organisations like that unless they're an A player. Now, a learning or growth culture, on the other hand, is everyone is acknowledged for the progression that they make. Yes, of course, you're going to be having people at the top of the league. That's naturally going to happen, but what a growth or learning culture does is it takes into consideration the human beings and each the responsibility of the organisation, sales leader and sales enablement department, if they have one, is to evolve each person along their development journey so that the number of, if they're doing outreach, the number of really good conversations they have is increasing. If they're going to meetings, the number of conversions and meetings are progressing. Everything's going in the right direction. Even if it only increases by 1 or 2, or even 0.1 or 0.2, the person is going in the right direction. And that is something to be celebrated because progression and growth are extraordinarily powerful when they are acknowledged. So the people who are not an A player will be a blend of fixed and growth mindset, which means they need a really great leader to support that growth, like to nudge them out of their comfort zone and then support them in the resulting stress that always happens for every human being when they're nudged outside of their comfort zone. Some people manage it really well and some people truly don't. So for me, a learning and growth culture takes the non-A players and makes them feel like A players. So they want to go the extra mile. They want to step outside of their comfort zone. They feel good when they try something new. And even if they get it wrong, they feel good because they've learned something, because the sales leader makes them feel good about it. And ironically, the learning and growth cultures outperform high performance cultures every time. Because can you imagine the people, I talk about 10, 80, 10, like the 80% below the A players, when all of those improve by even a small percentage growth, the overall growth is enormous.
So love that. I get it. Makes a hell of a lot of sense. It explains why that sales leader I was talking about said we should really be hiring on mindset. I want to come back in a second to how we do that, how we optimize this, a few tips on that. But just drilling into that a little bit, for the benefit of people that haven't been familiar with the growth mindset, there are two mindsets that Carol Dweck identified. One is fixed, where you see failure as personal, pervasive, and permanent. In other words, it's my fault. It's always going to be a problem. There's nothing I can do about it. And then the growth mindset, where you just see failure as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And I think in sales, more than anything else, a lot of your life is failure in terms of if you're doing outbound sales, you're doing outbound calling and emailing, the response rates are so low, you could easily say, well, I've had 10% response rate today. That means 90% of people didn't get back to me, right? I'm out of here. So that's why mindset is so important, particularly in something like selling, which I see as a competitive sport. So I think your sporting references are very appropriate, actually. In that context, I think it makes a whole lot of sense. But I think the key question that people will want to understand is, how do you identify people's current mindset? Is that where the assessment comes in?
The assessment does measure the 9 traits that Carol Dweck focused on in her research, or that she uncovered. But I think the most obvious way to recognise if one of the team, or each of the team, whether they're fixed or growth, is that somebody with a growth mindset doesn't really avoid any sales activities. They will give it a go. Even if they're not that good at it, they'll go, okay, well, let's try it once, and then I've got my starting point and I know where I need to improve. That's just the way that they think. And they will also have a determination and a discipline to keep doing it. They'll have that resilience to keep doing it until they've mastered it. They just won't give in. They won't let that beat them. They will just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So that's growth. Someone with a fixed mindset will be thinking, I don't think I can do this. I can't do it as well as that person. Therefore, and they'll be comparing themselves to somebody who's mastered it over a certain period of time. And they might give it a try. And the minute it feels a bit clunky, which, let's face it, every time you do something for the first time, it's a bit clunky. It doesn't matter what it is or who you are. And they do it and they get, oh, that's a bit clunky. I don't think I can do that. And they will back away. So the people with a fixed mindset will back away, avoid, make excuses for not having had the time to do those things. And so it's very easy to observe from someone's behaviours the reason, whether they're fixed or growth. And in truth, whilst the A players are predominantly growth, I would say the 80% that come next will be a blend of fixed and growth, because there will be some things that they are totally fine with, and there'll be some things that they won't be.
And is a mindset the same as an attitude?
That's an interesting question, Kevin. I think it can be, but it might not be. And the reason I say it might not be is because sometimes you don't know what the root cause of that attitude is. So the mind is a very complex piece of kit, and it's simple at the same time. I always say somebody's mind, there's areas that are lit and, that are aware to you as a human being. And then there are areas in darkness. So in that darkness, there is stuff in there, you just can't see it. So often when people have, say, a limiting belief, they may not even know they have that limiting belief because something happened to them as a child. They've totally forgotten all about it, but they're still replaying the behavior that is triggered by that limiting belief. And in my experience working with salespeople, the one that comes up when you dig deep, and they might not use these words, but I'm not good enough will be somewhere lurking in the background when people are avoiding activities. So the reason I say mindset is different to attitude is because mindset can be unknown to people, whereas attitude is like, I'm not going to do that. It's a waste of time. It's like, so that's, I think it's slightly different, but I can see why people would link them together.
Can your mindset change on a day-to-day basis? Could it be fixed mindset one day? Maybe on a Monday, you're feeling like Monday morning blues, you're kind of a fixed mindset. And then by Wednesday, you're feeling a bit more optimistic. So you're more like growth mindset.
I would say it's context dependent. I would say if you're fixed in a particular context, you will be fixed unless something transformational happens to change your mind. Or a coaching intervention by your sales leader or the person who coaches you. So coaches are incredibly powerful because the job of a coach is to ask questions and not give responses. And so when you ask a question that makes someone go, oh, I never thought of it like that, that can be transformational.
See, I think in my coaching, I think I define attitude as how you look at the world.
Yeah.
And I define style, leadership style particularly, but also selling style as how the world looks at you.
Oh, that's an interest. I can see that actually. I've never thought of it before, but I can see that.
And I think when we look at attitude and mindset, I think the difference is for me, I think too many people when they're faced with a challenge, and we can all fit into this bucket sometimes, they operate from their feelings. They're not really thinking. We feel everything first, don't we? And I think we're feeling.
Well, I have a slight disagreement on that, but we'll come back to that.
But I think, let's come back to that. I love disagreements. I love an argument, frankly. So let's bring it on. But I think we operate often from feelings.
We do. I agree with that.
I don't feel like I'm good enough to do this. I don't think. No, I think growth mindset is all about thinking and being rational and overcoming your emotional feelings. Yeah. So I think, personally, I think I am broadly growth mindset, but there are days when I don't feel like I want to do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a triumph of character if you persist with things that you know are good for you, even if you don't want to do them.
Yeah. I think that is absolutely. And I remember years ago, Tony Robbins used to say, a master is someone who keeps on doing the stuff that they know they have to, even if they don't like to.
Yeah.
Or don't want to. But no, I think our feelings are the true barometer of where we are. I think our thinking can be distorted and can be distorted by ego. So say, for example, I'll give you a really blatant scenario. A sales leader is really mad at one of their salespeople for something, not hitting target, missing a meeting, whatever it is. And the sales leader shouts at the salesperson, like, what the hell were you thinking? Right? The mind or the ego could say, well, they deserved that. They deserve to be shouted at. What kind of idiot does that? The feeling that you get in the body when you shout at someone and make them feel small is not good. You can feel that that's not, as a leader, you can feel that that's not the right thing to do. So I always say to sales people and to sales leaders that to notice if there's an activity that they don't enjoy doing, just notice what feeling they get in their body just before they're about to do this thing, whatever the thing is. And if that feeling is negative, to stop, because they're not going to do that activity with full body is what I call that. It's not going to be an embodied activity. There'll be part of them wanting to do it and part of them pulling back, which means that they'll be doing it in a half-hearted way, which never gets the result that you want. Now, then I go, what was the thought that created that feeling? Now, often, remember I said our thoughts can often be unconscious? And I go, just make it up. It doesn't have to be accurate. And they always say something like, I'm going to screw this up, or I don't want to make a mistake. They always come up with something. So the trigger thought then creates the feeling that then creates the action and gives you the result. So I get them to change the trigger thought. So I say, what else could you think? Well, every time I do this, I get better and better. Every time I do this, I learn what works and doesn't work. And I say, okay, so which one resonates? They pick one, because after I get them to come up with 5 or 6. And then I go, how does that feel when you think that thought? And they go, oh, that feels all right, actually. I feel quite curious, or I feel quite hopeful. And so that's why I disagree with the trigger thought. Could be unconscious. You may not know what it is, but that is what generates the feeling. And then the feeling just is consuming. So if you have a negative feeling in the body, you cannot perform the activity.
And what about the role of talent in all of this, Leigh?
Well,
how does that work? I mean, let me ask you this question. Let's try and be contentious.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-help books, a lot of success literature out there today. I was watching Britain's Got Talent last night, admiring people that have leapt onto stage and taken the opportunity to grab a microphone and show us what they're capable of. So I'm sure that to a large degree demonstrates a growth mindset. But if we think about selling as an example, how important is talent in actually being successful, talent and attitude together?
I think it is vital. Talent, you have to have skills and talent. You have to have a mindset talent too. So some people may be naturally talented at some things. Like I was naturally talented at chatting with people when I I didn't have to think about learning that. I just did it. But when I became a sales leader, I had no natural talent at leading people because I was one of those A players that had no idea what it was like to struggle, because when I knew I had to do something, I just did it. So I had zero talent as a sales leader, but then I went out and learned. And over time, I became a talented sales leader because I wanted to master that art, that skill. And I had an innate desire to be the best leader I could for the people in my team. So that belief that made me a really good salesperson about helping organisations and people in those organisations also ran through like a thread. So how can I help the people in my sales team? And then when I started my business, how can I help the people that work for me? How can I support and help and develop our clients' people? So that through line for me has been what has driven me all along. And talent, some people do not know what their talent is. They need someone external to them to say, you are great at that. I love the way you specifically do that. It's so cool. I'm going to get you to talk about it at the next sales meeting, and that might terrify them, but the acknowledgement that they're actually good, because Simon Sinek talks about every person in your sales team is someone's son or daughter that have been bestowed to you for the next phase of their development journey. And I really resonate with that. Some people have never had any acknowledgement at all. They've been in families where that hasn't happened. They've been in schools where that hasn't happened. And quite honestly, they cannot see their own diamond because no one's ever shone the light on it. It's in that warehouse in the dark part of their mind. I find that really sad.
It is a sad thing. I think one of the saddest things in life is unrealised potential.
Yeah, I really agree with that, Kevin. I really do. And when I'm in a room with salespeople or sales leaders, I start off sessions with a bead. I have these little wooden beads and I put them on the tables and say, pick whichever one attracts your attention. And I say, what's your bead? What is it about you that everyone can rely on? It could be anything, like you're a good listener, you're determined, you're kind. What characteristic do you have that is totally unshakable within you? And that is your bead. And whenever times are tough, just go back to that bead and know, I am kind, I'm going to take a kind action, or I'm a good listener, I'm going to listen to this person and really want to understand them. And when people start off acknowledging something good about themselves, guess what? The development always has more impact.
So that all sounds very positively, which is lovely. But is having a positive attitude something we bang on a lot about? Glass half full as opposed to half empty. Is that the same as having a growth mindset?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Right. Well, tell us the difference then. Let's hear it.
Well, I would say, having been of the age when personal development started and it was all about, yes, you've got to think positive. If you have negative thoughts, you might attract something negative to you.
The walking over the hot coals stuff.
Yeah.
Fire walking and all that.
Yeah.
Just have a positive. You can achieve anything you want if you have a positive attitude. You dispute that claim, do you?
I do. I think that's toxic positivity.
I agree with you for what it's worth, right? When I was trying to have a disagreement with you, but I actually agree with you. Some of that stuff drives me around the bend, actually.
I mean, it was good of its day. But what I realised, and when I kind of broke free of it, is that there is such a thing as toxic positivity. If I did it, you can do it. Well, that's all very well if you came from the same starting point. Not everyone. I did it, I overcame this, da-di-da. Yeah, but what happens if you're a single mum with 2 kids and you have to do a full-time job to earn enough money? It's not the same. No. So I think positivity is what's good about this. What is good about this, but being realistic. Toxic positivity is, I'm going to smash it. I'm going to smash it even though I haven't got any money. I've got no skills. I'm just going to imagine myself doing it and it will come. It's like, it's raining outside. Yes, but the sun's also shining. Yeah, but it's raining outside. Yeah, take an umbrella. It's being grounded in reality as well. You can be positive, but also you have to own when it is a mess. You have to own when the shit hits the fan. You have to go, oh my word, I screwed up this time.
So you can learn the growth mindset.
Yes, you absolutely can.
Is that what you do? You help people to learn a growth mindset?
Yes, I help them to act, but first of all, they have to accept where they are, because there's so much pretense in sales. Sales is all about, I can do that. I can do that, no problem, because nobody wants anyone else to know of their vulnerabilities.
But how do you help people to accept where they are?
I say it doesn't matter what other people think. I say as long as you accept where you are, then you can grow. But if you're pretending to be, so I talk about the book of life, like our lives are like chapters in a book. So if you're pretending to be at chapter 10, but really you're at chapter 5, you can't grow from chapter 10 because you don't know what was in chapters 6 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to know, you need each piece of the chapters, each piece of the puzzle, each little brick, so that you're ready for the next one. So you get to 100% of chapter 5, that makes you ready for chapter 6. So if you're pretending to be at chapter 10, you can't grow because you can't own up. You can't confess to the things you don't know. So I say, don't tell anyone what chapter you're at, but just you acknowledge that you're at chapter 5 and ask yourself what you need to do to get to chapter 6. Don't have to tell anyone. Just you have to be honest with yourself. So if you're honest with yourself, then you go, okay, what do I need to do? And you might ask your boss, you might just say, what do you need to see more from me for me to be ready for the next chapter?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. Does it all start with the assessment?
Yeah, but not, I was doing this kind of work before I came across the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to. I mean, if the assessment gives you so much intelligence, it's brilliant.
Where do we get it from, the assessment? Where do we go?
You can come to me and you get it from me, and you don't even have to have any development, but you'll get the intelligence. And the great thing about the personal report is that it goes direct to the person. No one need look at it. In fact, Matthew Side's organisation do not give it to anyone else without the written permission of that individual. Absolutely. Which means they can be 100% honest. And in each of the reports, they get their own personalised plan on the areas of growth mindset that need developing and what they can do personally. Now, when and then Matthew Side's team amalgamate all the responses, and then they give the organisation a report that gives them results of how they score against the 6 cultural areas so that people can grow. So you don't have to have any training to have the diagnostic, and equally you don't have to have the diagnostic if you want the development, but they do, it does make for a better development journey for the individual if they have got it.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to change tack now because we need to think about bringing this in for a safe landing in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you wish you knew? I guess here you are, this is growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
Learning. What's the one thing you wish you knew at the beginning of your career that you picked up along the way?
Well, one we have actually already discussed, and that is positivity won't get you there. Positivity and enthusiasm will not get you there without a strategic plan, or at least some steps and milestones. Because in those days of my toxic positivity, I just thought I was always going to get there, and sometimes I just didn't.
No, lovely. I like that. I agree with that as well. I completely agree with that. What about thinking of the end of a busy day for you then? Because you sound like you've got quite a bit on your plate. You've got books publishing, you've got a company to run, you've got programs to run, you have conversations to have, you appear on market leading podcasts like the Sales Code Leadership Podcast. Don't know how you fit it all in, Leigh, but what do you do to unwind at the end of the day?
Well, I'm a great believer in meditation and embodiment practice. So every evening at the end of the day, I will do my embodiment practice and meditation, and I ensure that I stay off social media for at least an hour or two before I go to bed. And also, I get plenty of sleep.
Okay, good. Right, okay. That also, I'm going to challenge that. That sounds great. Let's assume you've had a crap day. We all have crap days at the office. You're not feeling great. You're telling me you still do that? You're not inclined to go for a large glass of Beaujolais?
No, I always do it, even more on those days. I've been doing it for about 8 or 9 years now. So it's like going to the gym. You do it because it's part of who you are rather than something that you do. So now, if I've had a really bad day, I might not do as long a practice, but I will always do some practice.
How long would you meditate for, ideally?
I normally do about 35 minutes every night but separate things. So I'll do my embodiment practice, which is like a movement practice. And then I probably do about 20 minutes of meditation on my cushion.
I went to Buddhist meditation classes for 6 years, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it took me, I think after about 3 years, I began to get the hang of it. And I had one or two moments, actually. What's lovely about it, as you know, is that I've got a very busy mind most of the time. Just to have it just settle down, just calm down for a second and have a space of nothing.
Yeah.
It's wonderfully relaxing.
It's wonderfully relaxing, but I'll make you laugh. I would say maybe 15 years ago, I did a 6-week meditation class. And after 3, I thought, I can't stand this old nonsense. This is absolute rubbish. I'm never going to be able to do this because I can't shut my mind up. And here I am all these years later being an avid meditator. And you know what? Is my mind quiet all the time? No. But you just keep coming back. And, I just think and people who can't meditate, they say to me they can't meditate, I'll often say to them, can you sit in your garden, or if you haven't got a garden, look out the window with a cup of tea or coffee and just observe? And they go, oh yeah, I can do that. I went, well, that's meditation. You don't have to sit on a cushion.
No, it's a skill that you can develop.
Yeah. And lots of people know they're doing it. People sitting in the garden with their morning cup of tea or coffee, just watching the birds, looking at the flowers. They're meditating, but no one's ever labelled it that.
So what time will you be doing your meditation practice tonight, Leigh?
Normally about 10.
And at night?
I'll do it at the end of I'll do it before I go to bed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I always make sure I get 8 hours sleep.
Really?
Unless... obviously, sometimes things get in the way, like you're out and you can't get to bed your normal time.
Solid 8 hours.
Oh, yeah. I love my sleep.
Oh, I'd kill for 8 hours. Don't get me wrong. I think that's fantastic.
A lot of people tell me that, but I've never had a problem sleeping.
No. Naturally talented, I think. Well, I have to tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure. I knew it would be.
Oh, for me too, Kevin, really.
So much more we could talk about, and maybe there'll be a Mark 2 or episode 2 one day, because it's such a big topic, mindset. It really is. It's just huge, isn't it? Thank you so much for your time, Leigh.
Thank you for having me on your podcast, Kevin. I've loved it.
And thank you to the listener. Please do subscribe to the show, but not to miss any further episodes. And do give us a review if you like the content, because it helps to boost the ratings enormously.